This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Father's Day is coming up soon, and there's no better gift for Dad than soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Now understand, you're not telling Pops that he stinks. Instead, you're letting him know he deserves the best. Sterling soap is made from 100% natural ingredients, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there is a product and a scent for all the dads out there. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. It's May 15th, and on this day in 1912, Detroit Tiger Ty Cobb went into the stands at New York's Hilltop Park and started beating on a man who'd been heckling him since the start of the game. He may have been known as the Georgia Peach, but he was not a peach of a guy by any stretch. Most who played with him said he was easily angered, flat-out mean, consistently a bully, vindictive, and paranoid. In the fourth inning, the fan, Claude Lucker, said the wrong thing or a series of wrong things after heaping criticism and vitriol on the Georgia Peach for the past hour or so. Cobb tossed his glove down, raced into the outfield stands, and proceeded to pummel Lucker. Now, Lucker had the misfortune of not having hands, so he could not fight back. It did not matter to Cobb, as he continued to hit him in the head, beat him to the ground, and then he spiked him and kicked him. Cobb was ejected from the game, and American League President Ban Johnson handed down a 10-game suspension. And of course, this was not the only fight Cobb would be known for. He famously got into fights with umpires, teammates, players on the other team, and even a hotel night watchman. On this day in 1941, it was just a simple ground ball that skated through the infield for a hit, but it was the first hit in a streak that would eventually become Joe Dimaggio's Major League record 56-game hitting streak. On this day in 1981, Cleveland's Len Barker pitched a perfect game. The Cleveland Indians were at home on this cold and misty evening, taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, Barker is never going to be associated with the all-time great pitchers, but he did have a solid 11-year career with the Rangers, Indians, and Braves, and this is the prime of his career. His 1980 season was his best, winning 19 games and leading the majors in strikeouts with 187. He would lead the majors in the strike-shortened 81 season as well. But here in May, a little less than a month before the strike would wipe out 2 months of the season, Barker was on top of his game. The Blue Jays didn't exactly present a murderer's row of hitters. In fact, they were the worst team in the American League, especially in the first half. But the perfect game nearly was a moot point from the start. The first batter that night was Alfredo Griffin, who hit a ground ball that was destined to go into center field, but shortstop Tom Bereiser, showing some range to his left, snow-coned it in his webbing, and then whipped it to first to nip Griffin by a half step. That was the closest the Jays would come to reaching base the rest of the night. Only 4 balls were hit hard enough to make it to the outfield, and all of those were just lazy fly balls easily reeled in. Barker had control of his fastball all night, hitting the gun consistently at 96, and he never came close to walking anybody. He struck out 11 on the night, with 7 of those Ks coming in the final 4 innings. When Ernie Whitt popped up for the third out in the ninth, Len Barker had the 8th perfect game in modern Major League history, and the first one in 13 years in the majors. One more interesting thing from this game, catching Barker that night was Ron Hassey, who would become the first and still only catcher in Major League history to catch 2 perfect games. He was the battery mate of Dennis Martinez when he threw his for the Montreal Expos in 1991. On this day in 1990, it was the longest game in Stanley Cup Finals history. This was Game 1 between the Edmonton Oilers and the Boston Bruins at the old Boston Garden, and it was a rematch of the '88 Stanley Cup Finals that the Oilers had won in 4 straight. The game was tied at 2 at the end of regulation. In the first OT, shots pinged the pipes, goalies made kick saves, stick saves, and glove saves. Guys put their bodies on the line to block shots, and the first OT ended still tied at 2. It was scoreless for another 20 minutes, and they went to OT number 3. About midway through that third overtime, somebody pulled the plug on the lights.
Will go off. Now, I can't believe this, folks. I can't believe this. We were here in the playoffs 2 years ago, and we have got a power failure here at the Boston Garden. Can you believe this? Because you remember 2 years ago when these two clubs were in the Stanley Cup Final, the lights went out here in Boston. And somebody is trying.
It wasn't completely dark in the Garden, but it was too dark to play. It took about 25 minutes to change out the fuses and get all the lights back on. Soon after they did, the Oilers' Peter Klima went lights out on the Bruins. Klima's goal came with a little less than 5 to play in the third OT, ending the 9th longest game in the NHL and the longest Cup Finals game, lasting 115 minutes 13 seconds. It topped the previous mark by a minute and a half, set back in 1930. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports Fun Fact. The rock duo Hall & Oates churned out some great hits in their time together, but they may have never met each other if it wasn't for them taking cover during a shootout. They were both students at Temple University, and in 1967, these two were set to perform with their respective bands for a concert at the Adelphi Ballroom. A few members of the audience got into an argument, which escalated quickly from words to chains and knives to shots being fired. Well, that ended the concert, and Daryl Hall said he ran to an elevator in the back of the venue, and John Oates was already in it. Hall jumped in, and the two started talking. It was a quick meetup, but it soon turned into them teaming up together and creating some great tunes like I Can't Go For That, Sarah Smile, Rich Girl, and Maneater. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.